Welcome to Scary Voodoo Stories. Smash like and subscribe to tread the thin line between reality and the surreal. Let's begin our eerie expedition. In the heart of Louisiana's swamps, where the air hangs thick with the scent of moss and mystery, Father Gene walked with a purpose. His tall, lean figure cut through the fog that clung to the water's surface, and the setting sun cast long shadows that seemed to whisper of ancient secrets. As a respected voodoo priest in his small village, Gene was no stranger to the unseen forces that pulsed beneath the veneer of the natural world. But today, an unease unlike any before gnawed at him, a sense that something deeply wrong had taken root. The evening's somber tranquility was shattered by the desperate voice of a village elder, gasping out tales of a mysterious illness that had begun to spread. Fathers, mothers, and children alike were struck down by a malady that no medicine could touch. And with illness came fear, and with fear came whispers that a curse had been laid upon them. Driven by a mix of concern and the weight of responsibility that his role as a spiritual guide entailed, Gene ventured deeper into the swamp. The twilight hours lent an otherworldly glow to his surroundings, transforming the familiar into realms of shadow and half-light. It was in this liminal space that he found them, the symbols. Carved into the bark of a gnarled cypress tree, obscured by hanging moss, were markings unlike any he had come across in his years of study. They spoke of ancient rites, of powers called forth from the depths of time, and at their center lay the unmistakable sign of Damballa, the serpent deity long forgotten by many, but revered by a few for its immense power. A chill crept down Gene's spine as he realized the gravity of what stood before him. Damballa's invocation was no trivial matter. The deity's awakening could mean devastation for his people, unless appeased properly. With the weight of his village's safety pressing down upon him, Gene knew that the path ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty. But turn back he could not. In the days that followed, Gene sought out Marie, a biologist who had come to the swamp to study its ecosystem. Her makeshift research camp was a cluttered testament to her dedication, filled with samples, notebooks, and equipment. Gene found her peering through a microscope, her concentration so complete she didn't hear him approach. "Miss Marie," Gene began, his voice steady despite the turmoil within, "I need your help." Marie looked up, her green eyes narrowing with skepticism. "Father Gene, this is about your spirits and curses. I assure you, I have real work to do." Gene explained the situation, his words painting a picture of the dire circumstances that enveloped their village. To his surprise, Marie's skepticism didn't wane. Instead, it seemed to fuel her curiosity. By the time he had finished, an unlikely alliance had begun to form, one grounded in the desperate hope that science and spirituality could together uncover a way to combat the spreading darkness. But John knew that Marie's knowledge alone would not suffice. He needed someone who understood the spiritual aspect as deeply as he did, someone who had once walked the path of voodoo alongside him. His thoughts turned to David, a former practitioner whose faith had been shattered by tragedy. Gene found David in his rundown home on the edge of the village, the man's despair almost palpable in the dim light. "David, my friend," Gene said softly, reaching out. "I know the pain you've endured, the faith you've lost, but our people are in peril, and I believe you still have a part to play in saving them." David's eyes, clouded with disillusionment, met Gene's. In that gaze, Gene saw the flicker of the man he once knew, a man who believed in the power to make a difference, to heal and protect. It took time and many words, but eventually, David's resolve began to thaw. As the first light of dawn crept through the windows, a new determination had taken root. Together, John, Marie, and David set out, each driven by their own reasons but united in their quest to unravel the mystery of the curse and confront the awakening of Damballa. In the heart of the swamp, under a moon that cast a glow as ethereal as the spirits whispered about in hushed tones, the trio, Gian, Marie, and David, stood before an ancient voodoo shrine concealed by nature and time. It was here, Gene believed, they would find the sacred items necessary for the ritual to appease Damballa. The air buzzed with the charged energy of the unseen, and even Marie, ever the skeptic, could not deny the palpable shift that tingled across her skin. They moved with cautious reverence, guided by Jean's steady hand as he recited prayers under his breath. The shrine, adorned with symbols and offerings from generations past, held relics of significant spiritual power. Jean selected each item with care: rare herbs, a weathered drum, and a serpent figurine, polished smooth by years of worship. As he did, he explained their significance, weaving a tale of faith, power, and the intricate balance of life and death. Marie, listening intently, cataloged each item with a scientist's eye, while David, once more embracing his heritage, contributed his own knowledge to the task at hand. The preparation of the ritual was a meticulous process, each step grounded in traditions passed down through centuries. A circle was drawn, encasing them in a space that felt removed from the rest of the world, where only their mission mattered. Marie found herself drawn into the gravity of the moment, her skepticism giving way to a burgeoning respect for the ancient practices John and David held dear. As night deepened, they commenced the ritual beneath the watchful gaze of the blood moon. Jean, clad in ceremonial attire that seemed to bridge the gap between his mortal form and the spiritual realm, began to chant. Marie and David joined in, their voices a testament to their unity in the face of darkness. The air thrummed with energy as they called upon the Lows, seeking their guidance and protection in appealing to Damballa. It was then, at the climax of their concerted efforts, that John stepped into the center of the circle. The moment had arrived for him to make the ultimate sacrifice, a part of his own spirit offered up in exchange for the village's safety. The weight of his decision bore heavily upon him, a burden only he could understand fully. With a deep breath that seemed to draw in the very essence of the night, he began the final incantation. The words were ancient, imbued with the power of countless generations. As John spoke, a serene calm overtook him. He was ready. The serpent figurine lying at the heart of the circle began to glow, a soft light that pulsed with life. The reality of what was happening struck Marie and David then. The true depth of Jean's commitment and the very real presence of the spiritual forces they were dealing with. With a final, resounding chant, Jean completed the ritual. The light from the figurine exploded in a blinding flash, enveloping him in its radiance. When it faded, they found Jean kneeling, visibly weakened but alive. The oppressive energy that had hung over the swamp lifted, replaced by a sense of peace and renewal. They had appeased Damballa. The village was saved. But at what cost? Jean bore the weight of his sacrifice in silence, a lingering reminder of the thin line between darkness and light in the world of voodoo. As the days began to mend the fabric of the village, healing the scars wrought by fear and illness, the trio watched from the fringes. The air that once carried whispers of curses now hummed with sounds of recovery and revitalization. Children's laughter once again mingled with the murmur of the swamp, a testament to the resilience of life. Yet, amidst this resurgence, a quiet undercurrent of change pulsed through the heart of the community, centering around Father Jean. The priest himself felt an indelible transformation within. His once robust connection to the Los, a source of his strength and guidance, now whispered like a distant breeze. It was a sacrifice he had willingly made, but the echo of its cost reverberated in silent moments, lacing his triumph with threads of solitude. In the village, gratitude towards John, Marie, and David began to knit the torn fabric of community trust. A small gathering saw villagers offering thanks, their eyes harboring a complex tapestry of emotions: relief, awe, and a newfound respect that bordered on reverence. Yet beneath the surface gratitude, an invisible veil seemed to separate Jean from those he had sworn to protect. His sacrifice had saved them, but at the price of a gulf he now sensed between him and his people. Marie and David stood beside him, pillars of strength born from their shared ordeal. They too had changed. Marie found herself at a crossroads, her scientific world expanded by the undeniable reality of ancient powers. David, rekindling the ember of his faith, faced his past disillusionment with a sense of purpose reborn. Their paths, forever altered by the events in the swamp, reflected the complex tapestry of belief, science, and spirit. As the gathering dispersed, the trio shared a moment of silent understanding. Words were unnecessary. They had traversed a journey that bound them in ways beyond expression. That night, Father Jean held a private vigil in his modest dwelling, the walls adorned with symbols of voodoo lore. The flame of a single candle flickered, casting shadows that danced with the spirits of his ancestors. Alone, he whispered prayers of thanks and guidance, seeking solace in the rituals that still connected him to the spiritual realm. In the quiet reflection, Gene came to an acceptance of his new reality. His role as a bridge between the worlds, though now altered, remained his to bear. The sacrifice had not lessened his commitment but deepened it, grounding his belief in the underlying unity of all existence. The village, healed yet subtly transformed, continued its age-old dance with the forces of nature and the mysteries of the unseen. Father Gene, bearing the blessing of the Serpent, stood at the edge of this dance, his figure a silhouette of resolve against the backdrop of the swampland's eternal whisper. In the heart of the swamp, under the watchful gaze of the moon and the ancient trees, a balance had been restored. The blessing of the Serpent, born of sacrifice and unity, had woven a new chapter into the village's story, a tale of resilience, of shadows and light, and of the unbreakable bond between man and the divine. In the shadowed corners of a forgotten village in Louisiana, where the moss hung like ancient draperies and the air was thick with secrets, James Laurent found himself at a crossroads. A sculptor of modest renown, his talent was undeniable, yet recognition and success seemed to dance just beyond his grasp. The studio, a small cluttered space filled with half-finished statues and the scent of wet clay, was both his sanctuary and prison. The local art show held at the village's heart was bustling, a cacophony of colors and voices that seemed alien to James's solitary world. He wandered among the exhibits, his hazel eyes reflecting a mixture of admiration and hidden envy. Art to him was a confession made tangible, yet his own seemed to whisper too softly to be heard. It was here, amidst the riot of creativity, that he first saw her. Lila stood before an array of paintings that seemed to pulse with an inner light, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders like a shadow made liquid. The essence of mystery wrapped around her like a cloak, and when her eyes met his, a spectrum of violet so deep it felt almost supernatural, James felt an inexplicable pull. "You're a sculptor," she stated, not asked, her voice a melody that seemed to stir the air itself. "Yes," James replied, caught off guard by her presence and the strange certainty in her voice. "How did you know?" Lila smiled, a gesture that hinted at secrets and hidden depths. "Aizan knows those who create. She sees your struggle, James Laurent. She offers inspiration without bounds, for a price." The mention of Aizan, the Loa of the marketplace and protector of artisans, in such a casual manner should have sparked skepticism, if not outright disbelief. Yet, standing before Leela, James found himself ensnared by the possibility of what she proposed. The promise of a muse, a divine guide, was a siren's call to a drowning man. In the weeks that followed, James's work underwent a transformation that could only be described as miraculous. Under Lila's enigmatic guidance, his sculptures began to take on a life of their own, their features so exquisitely detailed they seemed poised to draw breath. Success, once an elusive dream, now poured in like sunlight through open windows, and with it recognition. Yet amidst the acclaim, an undercurrent of unease began to weave its way through James's thoughts. Marcus, James's stalwart friend since their college days, was the first to voice the doubts that had begun to haunt the edges of James's mind. They sat in the cluttered comfort of James's studio, surrounded by sculptures that seemed to watch with silent, knowing eyes. "These pieces, they're incredible, James, but they're different. There's a depth to them that's almost disturbing," Marcus said, his voice laced with concern. James paused, a chisel in hand, as he turned to meet his friend's gaze. "It's just a new technique I'm trying," he lied, the words tasting like ash on his tongue. Marcus pressed, his blue eyes earnest. "Ever since you met that woman at the art show, it's like you've changed. There's a darkness to your work now. You sure you're all right?" James forced a smile, attempting to dispel the building tension. "I've never been better," he asserted, though the flicker of doubt in his eyes betrayed his words. But Marcus wasn't convinced. As he left the studio that evening, casting a worried glance back at James, it was clear that the chasm between what was said and unsaid had begun to widen, threatening to swallow James whole. Unbeknownst to them both, The path James walked was one from which returning unscathed was not a promise that could be kept. One night, under the luminescent embrace of a full moon that bathed the world in a ghostly silver, James's sleep was stirred by whispers that seemed to emanate from the very air itself. The darkness of his room pulsed with a presence that was both foreign and intimately familiar. Lila, or rather, Ayazan, as she had revealed in moments of unearthly candor, appeared before him, her form ethereal, a specter of shadows, and moonlight fused into the semblance of a woman. James Laurent, her voice, a symphony of many, reverberated against the walls. The time has come for your true testament. The world marvels at what you've created under my tutelage, but all art demands sacrifice. To reach the pinnacle of what you desire, a deeper covenant must be forged. James, caught in the liminal space between dream and wakefulness, felt fear clutch at his heart, a fear compounded by the undeniability of Ayazan's presence. What sacrifice? He dared to ask, his voice a mere whisper against the power of hers. A life, Ayazan responded, unflinching, the air around her shimmering with unspoken power. In exchange, your legacy will be immortal, beyond the realms of human achievement. The demand struck James like a physical blow, his heart racing, a cold sweat breaking across his skin. This was the darkness Marcus had warned him of, the price of his newfound success laid bare in its most horrific form. In the days that followed, James found himself withdrawn, the weight of Ayazan's demand a constant shadow that neither sun nor lamp could dispel. His sculptures, once a source of pride, now stood as mocking sentinels, their lifelike qualities a grim reminder of the pact he had entangled himself in. Marcus, ever observant, noticed the change in his friend. The vibrant, passionate sculptor he knew was receding, leaving behind a man haunted by secrets too dark to voice. Concerned, he invited James to the tranquil setting of a small local cafe, a neutral ground away from the oppressive atmosphere of the studio. "James, you've been distant lately, more so than I've ever seen you," Marcus began, his tone gentle, a stark contrast to the chaotic turmoil he knew waged within his friend's heart. I don't know if I can explain," James admitted, the weight of his silence a heavy chain around his neck. The reflection of a passing car's headlights flashed across his face, momentarily casting stark shadows that seemed to accentuate the internal struggle evident in his eyes. "It's that woman, isn't it? Lila, or Ayazan, or whatever she calls herself. What did she ask of you, James?" Marcus pressed, his concern sharpening into focused determination. The question, direct and brimming with unspoken understanding, broke the dam James had meticulously built around his fears. With a voice cracked from the pressure of held-back truths, he confided in Marcus about the nightmarish demand Ayazan had made. The tale, absurd and chilling, spilled forth like dark water, carrying with it the debris of James's fractured peace of mind. Marcus listened, a stoic sentinel against the tempest of James's confession. As the tale wound to its close, the weight of shared burden settled between them, an unspoken pact of its own kind forged in the crucible of friendship and the face of unfathomable darkness. The decisive moment found James under the cloak of night, the air thick with the scent of impending rain. Marcus, standing steadfast by his side, watched as his friend prepared to confront the ethereal entity that had ensnared his life. They stood at the edge of the Bayou, a place where the veil between worlds was rumored to be thinnest, a liminal space where spirits danced just beyond the ken of mortal eyes. "Lila, Ayazan!" James's voice broke the silence, a defiant challenge cast into the shadows. "I reject your demand. My art, my soul, they are not yours to barter with. Whatever pact was made, I end it here." The air shifted, a palpable charge electrifying the atmosphere as Lila materialized, her form more formidable, more imposing than James remembered. "To reject the pact is to reject everything you've gained. James Laurent, are you willing to pay that price for your insolence?" Her voice, once melodic, now bore the edge of a sharpened blade. James, bolstered by Marcus's presence, stood his ground. "I'd rather lose it all than sacrifice another's life for my ambition. My talent, my success, they mean nothing if built upon such darkness." A silence, heavy and expectant, fell. Then, to their astonishment, Lila, or the entity that had worn her guise, began to fade, her form dissolving into the mists that swirled around the bayou. "So be it," her voice echoed, a whisper on the wind as she vanished entirely, leaving James and Marcus alone under the starless sky. In the days that followed, James discovered the harsh truth of Lila's final words. His sculptures, once marvels of lifelike precision, lost their supernatural allure. The fame and fortune that had come so easily receded like the tide, leaving him stranded on the shores of an ordinary life. Yet in that loss, James found something far greater, a renewal of his spirit and a rekindling of his passion for art, untainted by dark pacts and supernatural desires. He began again, his work imbued with an authenticity and depth that spoke of his journey through the shadows back into the light. Marcus remained by his side, a bulwark against the storms of doubt and a reminder of the strength found in true friendship. In the end, James realized that true artistry came not from divine bargains or otherworldly muses, but from the heart's depths and the soul's resilience. His sculptures, no longer eerily lifelike but vibrant with raw emotion and palpable humanity, attracted a new kind of acclaim, one rooted in genuine connection and shared human experience. And so, under the wide, embracing canopy of the Louisiana sky, James Laurent found his way back to himself. His art, once a testament to a Faustian bargain, now stood as a beacon of hope, a proof of the indomitable human spirit's capacity to overcome darkness. In the quiet moments, as he shaped clay between his hands, he thought of Lila, Eisen, and the price of ambition. But these were mere echoes of a past confrontation, reminders of a battle fought and won, not with supernatural forces, but with the unyielding power of the human heart. In the bustling heart of Port-au-Prince, where the modern world collides with ancient traditions, Alexandre, a young historian of Haitian descent, lived with an insatiable curiosity about his heritage. Amid the cacophony of daily life, he found solace in the silent stories of the past, whispered through old family photographs and yellowed letters tucked away in the attic of his childhood home. On a sweltering afternoon, as the sun cast long shadows across the faded walls, Alexandre stumbled upon a hidden compartment beneath the wooden floorboards. Inside, wrapped in a cloth embroidered with symbols he only vaguely recognized from the local voodoo lore, lay a collection of ancient tomes and artifacts. His hands trembled with anticipation as he unearthed a journal belonging to his great-grandfather, rumored to have been a powerful voodoo priest, a keeper of secrets between the worlds of the living and the dead. The journal spoke of a pact, a doorway to unspeakable power opened through an ancient ritual that could summon and bind Aloha, a spirit of the voodoo pantheon, to the will of the summoner. Alexandre's heart raced as he read on. His sister, Emmanuelle, a radiant soul taken too soon by a fever that no healer could cure, appeared in his thoughts. The possibility of bringing her back, of undoing the injustice of her untimely death, consumed him. As twilight descended upon the city, Alexandre found himself at the doorstep of Priestess Marie, a figure of considerable repute and the last known link to the voodoo rites of old. Her home, shrouded in the scent of incense and the soft glow of candlelight, felt as though it straddled the divide between the mundane and the mystical. Priestess Marie, her eyes penetrating the dim light like emerald beacons, listened to Alexandre's plea with a heavy heart. With a voice that seemed to carry the weight of lifetimes, she spoke of the dangers of such a pact, of the balance between life and death that must not be tampered with. Yet seeing the determination burning in Alexandre's eyes, she conceded, offering guidance for the summoning ritual, but cautioning him one final time of the price that such power demanded. Under the cloak of night, at a crossroads where the whispers of the dead were said to be most potent, Alexandre performed the ritual. The air around him chilled as a figure emerged from the shadows, his presence an amalgamation of elegance and dread. Baron Samedi, the eyes that held the abyss and a grin wide and mocking, appraised Alexandre. "I have awaited your call, child of my child's blood." The Baron's voice, both enchanting and eerie, filled the space between them. "Speak your desire, but heed the cost. For every gift a price must be paid." Tears shimmering in his impassioned gaze, Alexandre voiced his yearning to bring back his sister, to revoke the decree of death itself. A gleaming charm, cold to the touch, materialized in his hand as the pact was sealed. Power surged through his veins, a dark whisper guiding his newfound abilities. Little did he know, as he walked away from the crossroads, that the true price of his desire would unfold in ways beyond his darkest fears. The pact was sealed, the die was cast, and the balance of life and death had begun to teeter on the edge of chaos. As the days bled into nights, Alexandre found himself ensconced in the shadows of his newfound power. The charm pulsated with a relentless energy, its whispers growing louder, urging him to fulfill the pact's demands. Heeding its call, Alexandre ventured into the underbelly of Port-au-Prince, where the lines between right and wrong blurred amidst the dimly lit streets and the hushed murmurings of spirits. His first act, under the cloak of darkness, was to summon the souls of those deemed corrupt, those whose actions had sown misery and despair. With grim resolve, he stood as judge and executioner, feeding their souls to Baron Samedi as tribute. Each act left a hollow echo in his heart, yet the whispers promised justice, and the allure of Emmanuel's return spurred him forward. But as the city woke to the news of inexplicable phenomena, shadows moving of their own accord, chilling wails in the night, it became clear that Alexandre's judgment was not as righteous as he had believed. The dead, fueled by the dark pact, roamed the streets, their very presence a testament to the imbalance Alexandre had wrought upon the world of the living. It was during these tumultuous times that Priestess Marie sought Alexandre out, her presence commanding even amidst the chaos that had taken hold of the city. In her eyes, a mixture of disappointment and fear reflected back at him. "You have unleashed forces beyond your comprehension," she warned, her voice a solemn echo against the sounds of unrest. "This path leads only to ruin, not just for you, but for all of Port-au-Prince." Her words, meant to guide him back to the light, fell upon deaf ears. Alexandre, driven by obsession and the dark charm's seductive influence, could not see the collapse of the moral foundation on which he had built his actions. To him, the end justified the means, and nothing, not even Marie's cautionary counsel, could sway him from his mission. Amidst this turmoil, a profound encounter shook the very core of his resolve. One evening, as Alexandre sought solace in the memories of Emmanuel, he perceived her spirit beside him. Her visage, both ethereal and pained, held a silent plea. Emmanuel, though wordless, conveyed a message of caution, a beacon of purity amidst the growing darkness that sought to envelop her brother's soul. This spectral visitation ignited a flicker of doubt in Alexandre's heart. The realization dawned upon him that his sister, the very person he sought to save, might abhor the means by which he aimed to achieve their reunion. The spirits, whispers of conscience long suppressed, began to break through the charm's insidious influence, urging Alexandre to reconsider the path he had chosen. Yet even as this moment of clarity threatened to rekindle the light within him, the dark whispers of the charm grew more insistent, more demanding. Torn between the love for his sister and the corrupting allure of power, Alexandre stood at the precipice, the fate of his soul and that of Port-au-Prince, hanging in the delicate balance of his next choice. As the city descended into chaos, with the undead wreaking havoc in the once peaceful nights of Port-au-Prince, Alexandre's resolve began to crumble under the weight of his actions. The stark reality of the horrors his pact had unleashed became impossible to ignore. The once vibrant streets now whispered tales of dread, mirroring the turmoil within his soul. Driven by a desperate need to rectify his mistakes, Alexandre sought out Baron Samedi once more. The Loa awaited him at the crossroads, amidst a swirling mist that seemed to blur the boundaries between the worlds of the living and the dead. Baron Samedi's grin, as ever, held an unsettling mix of amusement and anticipation. "You've come to bargain, child of my child's blood," he intoned, his voice resonating with the power of untold eons. Alexandre, grappling with the magnitude of his folly, pleaded with the Loa to undo the havoc wrought upon Port-au-Prince. The darkness that had once emboldened him now hung heavily upon his shoulders, a shroud of guilt and despair. "Please," he implored, "I will give anything to make this right." Baron Samedi's laughter, a sound that seemed to echo from the depths of the earth itself, filled the air. "Everything has a price, Alexandre. The balance must be restored," he stated, eyes gleaming with an immutable truth. "A soul for a soul. This is the only way." In that moment, Alexandre understood the gravity of true sacrifice. The realization dawned upon him with heartbreaking clarity. The only way to save the city, to make amends for his errors, was to offer his own soul in place of the countless he had condemned. With a heavy heart and a resolve forged from his deepest regrets, Alexandre made his choice. "Take my soul, then," he whispered, "but let Port-au-Prince be free from this curse. Let my sister live." Tears streaked his cheeks, not for the life he was leaving behind, but for the hope that in his sacrifice he might finally find redemption. Baron Samedi nodded, a gesture of respect for the enormity of Alexandre's decision. As the charm dissolved into the mist, the souls Alexandre had ensnared were released, their whispers of gratitude a gentle caress against his spirit. The undead, freed from their bondage, faded into the night, their unrest quieted at last. With the pact fulfilled, Alexandre felt a profound peace envelop him. His vision blurred, the edges of the world softening as he stepped into the realm of the spirits. His last sight was of Port-au-Prince, bathed in the light of dawn, its beauty untouched by the shadows of the night. In the aftermath, Port-au-Prince awoke to a new day, the horrors of the past fading like a bad dream. Emmanuelle, resurrected by her brother's final act of love, found herself amidst a city reborn. In her heart, a bittersweet mixture of joy and sorrow took root, the joy of life granted anew, and the sorrow for the brother who had sacrificed everything for her. As the sun rose, casting long shadows that whispered of untold stories, Priestess Marie stood watch over the city. In the glow of the new dawn, she whispered a prayer for Alexandre, honoring the young historian who had traversed the darkest paths of voodoo only to find the light within himself. And so, Port-au-Prince thrived once more, its streets a testament to the power of sacrifice and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Alexandre's memory lived on, a reminder of the delicate balance between life and death, and the ultimate price of tampering with forces beyond mortal ken.